Chapter 698. Yin Hua sighed. I've only found 8 pregnant women in the entire city. If there were more, I might have succeeded. Yin Yi was so angry that he was about to lose his mind. Everything that Yin Yi had done had stained his hands with blood. He was already beyond redemption. Keeping him alive was really a scourge. That sunny and kind-hearted young man was really very far away from Yin Hua. Yin Hua kept introducing his experimental products. His eyes were filled with pride and joy. Yin Yi was expressionless, but his nails slowly sank into his palms. Slowly, they reached the end. Yin Hua took them to the elevator and continued to go down. The last floor was completely made up of his laboratory. It was full of experimental products. When they walked out of the elevator, they saw a huge hall. There was a lot of equipment in the middle of the hall. In the middle of the hall was a huge container. Fu Jingma was in the container. Countless tubes were inserted into Fu Jingma's body. The tubes extended all the way to the bottom. This is my most successful experimental product so far. Although there are still many flaws, he is already very strong, Yin Hua said excitedly. If this continues, sooner or later, I will be able to create an existence as strong as God. Yin Yi said expressionlessly, what about Xiaozi? You mean that child? He is really the best experimental product I have ever seen. His body is very strong and his ability is very special. He looks like a human but also like a zombie. It's simply wonderful. Do you know, brother? Yin Hua picked up a remote control from the cabinet and pressed it. A wall was immediately pushed open, and in the middle was a container that looked very similar to the one Fu Jingma was in. It was filled with a very strange colored liquid, and Little Bun was soaked in it. Little Bun's body was covered with tubes, and the tubes were connected in another direction. Xiao Qing's eyes turned red. So did Yin Yi. Yin Hua was still talking non-stop. Brother, he is really perfect. I have the confidence to make him the strongest experimental product. He will be even stronger than Fu Jingma. He will be an existence that is infinitely close to God. Yin Yi couldn't take it anymore. He punched Yin Hua's face. You are simply a beast. No. Even an animal would understand human nature better than you. Then, Yin Yi quickly stepped forward and suddenly smashed the container containing the small steamed buns. Crash! The container suddenly shattered, and the liquid instantly flowed out. Yin Hua touched her face and muttered to herself, brother. You hit me. You actually hit me. You're not my brother can't bear to hit me. My brother can't bear to hit me. As his expression slowly turned ferocious, the floor cracked bit by bit. In the end, countless black tentacles drilled out from the ground. Yin Yi pulled out the tubes from Little Bun's body and threw Little Bun to Xiao Qing. After Xiao Qing caught him, she probed Little Bun's body with her special ability. Fortunately, probably because of time, Yin Hua didn't have time to do anything to Little Bun. Little Bun's body didn't have any abnormalities. This was probably a blessing in disguise. As the tentacles drilled out one by one, the container containing Fu Jingma also shattered. Fu Jingma opened his scarlet eyes and instantly turned into the large worm that Xiao Qing had seen before. What was even more frightening was that Fu Jingma's body was no longer connected to the tubes, but to the black tentacles that drilled out from the ground. Xiao Qing quickly retreated. Then, she stretched out her vines and grabbed Yin Ye's waist, trying to drag him over. Yin Hua immediately pointed at Xiao Qing angrily. Kill her. Fu Jingma, who was motionless just a moment ago, instantly pounced on Xiao Qing. His worm mouth opened, and when he pounced in front of Xiao Qing, he began to spray dark green venom. Fu Jingshan quickly hugged Xiao Qing and Little Bun and rolled to the side to avoid the venom. Then, he quickly jumped up and landed on Fu Jingma's head. Punch after punch, he ruthlessly hit Fu Jingma's head. However, Yin Hua stretched out her hand and broke Xiao Qing's vines. She looked at Xiao Qing with bloodthirsty eyes. You want to steal my brother? Chapter 699. Do you want to snatch my brother too? Yin Hua's eyes were red like a demon. Why do you all want to snatch my brother? Everyone is like this. I want to kill all of you. Yes. I want to destroy this world. No one can snatch my brother from me. All of you deserve to die. Following his roar, Fu Jingma went crazy as if he had been provoked. He pounced on Xiao Qing and his venom kept spewing out. Guang Guang came out from the ground and held up a shield. When the venom hit the shield immediately started to melt. However, this had already bought some time for Xiao Qing and the rest. Xiao Qing carried Little Bun and quickly retreated. She had to put Little Bun in a safe place before she could join the battle. Yin Yi jumped up and kicked Fu Jingma's head heavily. His tentacles quickly stretched out and tied Fu Jingma up. Ah Qing, you go first. Xiao Qing had no choice but to release the flower. The flower immediately swallowed Little Bun. Its action was not to eat Little Bun, but to put Little Bun in its flower. It could control itself and not secrete any corrosive liquid. This way, its flower head would be the best protection. As long as it was not destroyed, Little Bun would be fine. Moreover, once it was attacked, Xiao Qing would also sense it. Xiao Qing kissed the flower's petals and said, Baby, take my son and hide. If something happens to me, take him away. Do you understand? There are my people outside. Take my son and go find them. You must ensure that my son is safe before I die. Don't come back to find me. The flower rubbed its leaves and made a rustling sound as if it was wailing. After a long time, it lowered its head dispiritedly and nodded in agreement. Thank you. Xiao Qing touched the flower and walked back in. No matter what, she would kill Fu Jingma and Yin Hua today unless she died first. As long as these two people were killed, they would no longer have any enemies. Moreover, among the humans, Jiang City already had enough deterrence. It could be said that Jiang City was already very safe. In this battle, only victory was allowed. For the sake of her friends and family, she would also kill these two people. When Xiao Qing entered the room, Yin Hua was already in a berserk state. His eyes were blood red, as if they were about to bleed. Brother, you attacked me? Yin Yi was expressionless. He was heartbroken, but he was already numb to the pain. No matter what had caused his younger brother to become like this, there was one thing that was certain. Yin Hua had to die. He had committed too many sins, so many that it was simply unforgivable. Rather than letting him harm everyone like a madman, it was better to let him die a quick death. Fu Jingma had gotten a little stronger, but there was Fu Jingshan, who was almost at the 9th level, Yin Yi, who was at the 8th level, and Xiao Qing, who was very close to the 9th level. The closer one was to level 9, the more they would comprehend. Fu Jingshan had once said that although he had only entered level 9 for a short period of time, he had already touched the threshold. The reason why level 9 was different was that after reaching level 9, one would comprehend their own comprehension. In one's own domain, this person's existence was like a god. However, it wasn't so easy to comprehend a domain. He still couldn't figure it out. As for Fu Jingma, he had been forcefully upgraded and modified. He didn't have a domain at all and couldn't comprehend one. This was also why Fu Jingshan said that although Fu Jingma was very strong, it wasn't to the point where he couldn't be dealt with. Chapter 700. He was, at most, a fake 9th level fighter. He only had the power of a 9th level fighter, but he didn't have a domain, so he wasn't that scary. Fu Jingshan was in charge of fighting Fu Jingma head-on, while Xiao Qing was in charge of harassing Fu Jingshan and strengthening him. Ever since the previous surgery, Fu Jingshan and Xiao Qing not only had a deeper understanding of each other, but their powers also seemed to be interconnected. 1 plus 1 sometimes didn't necessarily equal 2. It could even be greater than 2. When the two of them worked together, their combat power was definitely on par with a 9th-level fighter. Fu Jingma's physical body was too strong. For a moment, the battle was in a stalemate. However, he kept spitting out venom. The venom slowly formed a layer on the ground, and soon, there was no place to stand. There was only light supporting a pure land. Chen Jiuyao stood on the tree branch and kept attacking Fu Jingma from the side. Fu Jingma, who didn't get any results in a short period of time, looked a little anxious. He kept roaring and more tentacles came out of his body. Fu Jingshan took the opportunity and directly punched Fu Jingma's head into the ground. Xiao Qing took this opportunity to quickly release her spatial powers. A spatial crack appeared where Fu Jingma's face was. In an instant, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Fu Jingma screamed and rolled a little. This just happened to expose his face. Yin Yi immediately used his tentacles to temporarily hold Fu Jingma in place. Then, Fu Jingshan attacked Fu Jingma's face fiercely. When he stopped, Fu Jingma's face had already caved in. Fu Jingma twitched. The place where his face used to be had turned into a black hole. One could even see the wriggling flesh inside. Xiao Qing persisted. In an instant, sharp vines shot into the hole. No one knew how deep it went, but a large part of the vines disappeared. Fu Jingma twitched, but his body slowly swelled up. He swung his tail fiercely and smashed Fu Jingshan against the wall. Fu Jingshan's body was deeply embedded in the wall. Xiao Qing's vines were still in his body. He swung them wildly and dragged them over. Xiao Qing lost her balance and was dragged in front of Fu Jingma. He repeated the same trick and opened his worm mouth to bite her. Xiao Qing quickly gave up on the circle of vines. After leaping forward, she glared fiercely at the worm's eyes and used the rebound force to jump up. Her gaze was cold and her entire body exuded a murderous aura and determination. She tore open a crack in space, and in the next second, she appeared inside Fu Jingma's body. The outside was incomparably hard, but she didn't believe that the inside of his stomach would be as hard. Xiao Qing's gaze was cold. After entering Fu Jingma's stomach, a sharp blade formed by the power of space appeared in her hand. Then, she stabbed it fiercely. Corrosive liquid and blood instantly gushed out. Xiao Qing, who was prepared, instantly formed a layer of rattan armor on her body, temporarily blocking the corrosion of the liquid. In the next second, she held the sharp blade and ruthlessly tore open Fu Jingma's stomach. No matter how hard something was, it would still be soft on the inside. Xiao Qing tore all the way to the bottom, directly into Fu Jingma's stomach. There was a hole. At this moment, the liquid had already corroded most of the rattan armor on her body. Xiao Qing turned around and threw a crack in space into Fu Jingma's stomach. After that, she dodged. Once she reached the light, she quickly removed the rattan armor and cut off the flesh that was stained with a little bit of liquid. This was a battle tactic she had thought of a long time ago. However, she could only use this move completely against a large opponent. However, the result of the battle was very obvious. Didn't you see that Fu Jingma's stomach had already exploded? Chapter 701. It was as if he was dancing in an old disco. He was in so much pain that he was rolling on the ground. However, as he rolled, his wound slowly healed and his body became even bigger. This wasn't a good sign. The last time, Fu Jingma didn't know how to heal himself, but he had already caused them to suffer heavy casualties. This time, he had the ability to heal himself. Could they really win this battle? I don't believe in your nonsense. Yin Yi gritted his teeth. Taking advantage of the fact that Fu Jingma hadn't fully recovered, he rushed forward and stabbed the knife into Fu Jingma's bug eyeball. Fu Jingma was still rolling on the ground in pain. However, something terrifying happened. After he pulled the knife out of his eye slowly healed. Very quickly, it was as if he hadn't been injured at all. Not only that, he gave off the feeling that he was even stronger. This was simply a fact that made them despair. The three of them looked at each other and could see the fatigue and helplessness in each other's eyes. Yinhua faintly said, "Big brother, you must have been led astray by this group of people. Don't worry, I'll save you very soon. At that time, you'll definitely become the old big brother, and even better than before. Big brother, come with me, okay? I can give you immortality." Yi didn't want to talk to him at all, so Yinhua blamed everything on Xiaoqing and the others. "You must have taught my brother bad. I'm going to kill you. This way, my brother will come back to my side." Yinhua's blabbering gave Xiaoqing a conjecture. The current situation was very obvious. Fu Jingma had already lost his own will and was under Yinhua's control. Then, if she killed Yinhua, would Fu Jingma stop moving because there was no one to command him? Or perhaps, he would be easier to deal with. Xiaoqing looked at Yinhua but didn't make a move. No matter what, Yinhua was Yinye's younger brother. She had to take care of her own family's feelings. No matter how a scumbag like Yinhua died, he deserved it. However, if he became hostile with Yinyi because of this, then it really wasn't worth it at all. Xiaoqing whispered her guess to Yinyi. Yinyi whispered, "He's not normal now. He's a madman with great power. If we don't kill him, I really don't know what the world will become. Ah Qing, kill him. Give him a quick death and end all of this." Xiaoqing nodded and looked at Yinhua's position. Yinhua was standing behind Fu Jingma and was well protected. It would be difficult to attack him. The few of them pretended to continue probing and kept attacking Fu Jingma. Fu Jingma's body was riddled with wounds, but these wounds would slowly heal. He kept screaming and roaring in a hoarse voice. Although he kept getting injured, Xiaoqing and the others weren't unharmed. The most important thing was that they couldn't fully recover from their injuries so quickly. Even though Xiaoqing had the ability to heal, her ability was really limited. At least compared to her fighting ability, it was much weaker. While Xiaoqing was attacking Fu Jingma, she had been secretly observing him. She was observing Fu Jingma's position, and then she was calculating how she could get past Fu Jingma and kill Yinhua. Although she could use instant transmission, she had already used it before. If she used it again, her opponent would definitely be vigilant to a certain extent. It wouldn't be so easy to succeed. Therefore, they had to think of a way. As long as they killed Yinhua, everything would be fine. Xiaoqing secretly gave Fu Jingshan and Yinyi a look. The two of them immediately understood and began to attack fiercely. One of them attacked Fu Jingma's head, while the other attacked Fu Jingma's stomach. They cooperated well and their attacks were steady, accurate, and ruthless. Every attack caused Fu Jingma unbearable pain. Although he could heal quickly, the pain would still remain in his heart. Layer by layer, it made him suffer more and more. After blinding Fu Jingma's eyes again, Xiaoqing suddenly changed her direction and aimed her attack at Yinhua. The moment she attacked with her vines, she instantly moved behind Yinhua. Yinhua's weak body was right in front of her. As long as Xiaoqing ruthlessly punched the top of Yinhua's head, she would be able to end this battle. She quickly threw a punch at Yinye's head. Chapter 702. Yinhua turned back and smiled at her. His white teeth were arranged in 2 rows, but they gave off a cold feeling. Fu Jingma turned back abruptly. His body suddenly swayed, and he directly ignored the other 2 people and rushed toward Xiaoqing. Fu Jingshan and Yinye's full-strength attack broke through his defense for the first time. His tail was badly mutilated, but Fu Jingma didn't seem to feel anything. He directly crashed into Xiaoqing and forcefully smashed Xiaoqing into the ground. 80% of the buildings in the underground city were made of glass. After Xiao Qing was smashed into the ground, she realized that there was something underground. At the bottom of the dungeon, there was a huge hollow. The hollow was filled with the same liquid that they had seen outside. There was a huge worm soaking in the liquid. The worm looked very similar to Fu Jingmo, but it was much bigger than Fu Jingmo. Most importantly, there were many tubes on its body that were connected to Fu Jingmo. Xiao Qing broke through the surrounding floorboards with difficulty. She rolled forward and gave up on attacking Yin Hua. Instead, she directly rushed towards Fu Jingmo. Fu Jingmo raised his head and heavily slammed his body down. It seemed that he wanted to smash Xiao Qing into a meat patty. Xiao Qing instantly released her vines and formed a shield above her. This shield was very short and couldn't stop Fu Jingmo at all. However, it could buy her some time. At this moment, Xiao Qing had already rushed under Fu Jingmo's body. The space crack instantly cut the tubes connected to Fu Jingmo's body. Then, Fu Jingmo heavily slammed down. Xiao Qing was directly smashed into the floorboards for the second time. The sound of bones breaking could be heard clearly. At this moment, Fu Jingshan and Yin Yi, whose eyes were red, rushed over crazily. They directly cut off Fu Jingmo's tail from the wound they had caused previously. As for Xiao Qing, she tore open his abdomen again. Filthy blood gushed out and dripped onto the ground. Xiao Qing instantly appeared behind Fu Jingshan, panting heavily. She looked up and saw the big worm wriggling on the ground with difficulty. Dirty blood slowly flowed out, but he only moved for a while and did not recover as quickly as before. Yin Hua's gaze was cold. Clearly, he had calmed down a little. He looked at Xiao Qing and said, "No wonder my brother cares about you. It turns out that you do have some ability. However, defeating this trash doesn't mean anything. You still have to die." After leaving the tube, Fu Jingmo seemed to regain consciousness. He lay on the ground and his vision started to blur. At this moment, Fu Jingmo was like many people who would recall the past before they died. He slowly recalled the past. He thought of his mother holding his hand as they walked into the huge house. He thought of the little Fu Jingshan standing at the staircase, looking at him as if he was a piece of trash. It was a pity that in this lifetime, he had never won against Fu Jingshan. In terms of career, love, and in the end, he even lost his life. He was really indignant. Why did God always favor Fu Jingshan? Since he was young, he was an illegitimate child who could not see the light of day. Every month, he relied on his father's charity to survive. Fu Jingshan was the eldest son of the Fu family. He had a luxurious car, a mansion, and an endless amount of pocket money. Later, when he entered the Fu family, he thought that he would be able to see Fu Jingshan's angry and sad face. He thought that he could be on equal footing with Fu Jingshan. However, Fu Jingshan was very capable and quickly gained the approval of the company's directors. He took control of the company, while he could only train in his subordinate company. Later, when the apocalypse came, he saw Fu Jingshan fall into a group of zombies with his own eyes. He thought that the trauma that Fu Jingshan brought to him would be over. However, he did not expect that he would come back with power and Xiao Qing. Chapter 703. Such a beautiful Xiao Qing, why did she have to like Fu Jingshan? He had lost again and again. He really couldn't accept it. Fu Jingmo panted heavily for a moment. Actually, he was already tired of living like this, neither human nor ghost. However, even if he were to die, he wanted to take them with him. Yin Hua was about to make a move when he suddenly sensed that something was wrong. He looked at Fu Jingmo abruptly and then went to pull Yin Yi with a pale face. Yin Yi subconsciously flung his hand away. Then, there was a violent explosion. The filthy blood mixed with the pieces of the corpse suddenly exploded. Yin Hua quickly pounced over and pressed Yin Yi under his body. Fu Jingshan did the same. He hugged Xiao Qing tightly and protected her under his body as they rolled under the cabinet. When the explosion happened, the expressions of the people waiting outside changed, especially Mulin. She clutched the leaves of the daughter so tightly that she almost tore the daughter apart. But she couldn't move and didn't dare to move because the little bun was still inside. If the little bun was hurt because of them, no one wanted to see that. At this moment, the flower jumped out. When it saw Mulin, it opened its flower head and spat out little bun. Mulin hurriedly caught little bun. Then, he was excited and pleasantly surprised. "Everyone, follow me." When the smoke dissipated, Xiaoqin was still a little dazed because the explosion just now was so loud that she couldn't hear anything. After recovering slightly, Xiaoqin's expression changed. She turned over and hugged Fu Jingxin. They had hidden in a good place. It happened to be under the alloy cabinet used for the experiment. The cabinet was the first to be hit, so when the aftershock of the explosion landed on Fu Jingxin, it had already weakened a lot. Otherwise, Fu Jingxin would definitely have been smashed into pieces. But even so, there was no flesh on Fu Jingxin's back. There were only white bones left and some of the bones were even broken. Xiaoqin hugged Fu Jingxin in fear. If Fu Jingxin wasn't a zombie, such serious injuries would have been enough to kill him several times. She had underestimated Fu Jingma and wasn't vigilant enough, resulting in everything that had happened. The two of them were in a better position. At least they had a cabinet to block the blast. Yin Hua, on the other hand, had his back completely exposed. His body had almost been blasted into two pieces. Many parts of his body were beyond recognition. However, Yin Yi, who was in his arms, was in one piece. Not a single hair was missing. Because of this, the school wanted us to drop out of school. Their parents wanted you to pay for their medical fees. Behind my back, you kowtowed to the principal and said that it was fine if you dropped out of school because you had the strength and could still go out to work. But I couldn't. Other than studying, I had no other way out. You apologized to those parents and apologized to them. You went to school during the day and picked up trash at night to collect money to pay for their medical fees. Every day, you ate steamed buns and drank cold water. You also remembered to use the remaining money to buy some meat back and chop it into minced meat to make soup for me. Brother. You dote on me the most, right? Brother. Don't scold me. I won't dare to do it again, brother. I came home. The house is still good. I originally wanted to go back after finding you. We have a small vegetable garden at home. We can plant some things and it will be enough for us to eat. Chapter 704. Brother. I just want you to live well in this lifetime. I want you to live better than anyone else. I want you to never have to bow down to anyone again, brother. Look at me again, look at me again. He lay on Inye's body and cried like a child. His tears were wet and flowed down Inye's neck. Inye recalled the time when he was very young. When he came back from a fight outside, Yin Hua would cry as he applied medicine for him. The two of them were unwanted children. One of them was born without a conjunctiva in his left eye and the other without legs. The two of them grew up relying on each other. How did they end up like this? Inye touched Yin Hua's face. His face was covered in blood and looked very scary. Yin Hua grabbed Inye's hand and said, Brother. I don't want to die. I want to go home with you. I don't want to die. Don't hate me. Brother. As he cried, a black liquid slowly gathered and formed a catheter-like existence that was inserted into his body. Then, a strange liquid was filled in. Yin Yi, who was still recalling the past, suddenly grabbed Yin Hua and tried to pull out the catheter. You've already saved it. Don't make mistakes again. But the catheter seemed to grow in his body. He couldn't pull it out no matter how hard he tried. Yin Hua hugged Yin Yi tightly and said, Brother. I really don't want to die. I'll be immortal soon. I'll protect you in the future, okay? Brother, don't be afraid. Even if I have to kill everyone, I definitely won't hurt you. Yin Yi wanted to get up, but he was restrained by Yin Hua. His strength was inexplicably great, so Yin Yi couldn't break free for a moment. Yin Yi had no choice but to use his tentacles to smash the floor below, and then use all his strength to break free. Yin Hua couldn't move. His eyes were red. Brother. Brother. You're leaving me too. Brother. Don't you want me anymore? Brother. Come back. Don't go. After Yin Yi broke free, he realized that Yin Hua's body was completely wrapped in a black mass. And the source of this black mass was the thing that Xiao Qing saw previously. It was the black worm at the bottom of the underground city. The black bug was becoming smaller and smaller. It had completely melted and turned into a black liquid that was slowly absorbed by Yin Hua. Although Yin Hua had problems with his legs, he was a very smart child. Moreover, he had an absolute brother complex. After he graduated from high school, he did not continue to go to school. All of his knowledge was self-taught. Because of his profession, Yin Yi had left many similar books at home. He relied on these books and some that he bought later to enrich himself. After the apocalypse, he was lucky enough to awaken a very special ability. It was similar to the evolution of his body, but only his brain had evolved. In other words, his brain was highly developed, and his IQ far exceeded that of ordinary people. However, his body was still very weak. In a desperate situation, he found this big black bug. He then found that the energy in its body was very special. It could make the cells split at an extremely fast speed. In other words, a little bit of its energy could make a person's limbs grow back. Even if you were cut in half at the waist, as long as you were still breathing, you would be able to regrow your lower body. Of course, if the brain was damaged, there was no other way. Moreover, this big black bug was not dead. It was in a special dormant state and could still communicate with Yin Hua. Many of Yin Hua's ideas were developed by it. Yin Hua was very excited. He had never been recognized by anyone other than his brother. The big bug was the first other than his brother. Chapter 705. However, when the big bug suggested to merge with him, he rejected it. Other than his brother, he didn't trust anyone else completely. Even though the big bug told him about its current condition honestly, he couldn't trust it completely. The big bug's body was already damaged, so it didn't enter hibernation to preserve its life. On the other hand, Yin Hua's brain was extremely developed. He had the ability to control energy, but he didn't have this energy. The two of them hit it off immediately. All of Yin Hua's experiments were carried out with the help of the big bug, including Fu Jingmo. Fu Jingmo was the host body that Yin Hua found for the big bug. Unfortunately, it was destroyed before it matured. We have to stop him. Yin Yi was extremely anxious. That thing looks weird, but I feel that it's extremely dangerous. I can't be sure what will happen after the two of them merge, but it definitely won't be anything good. Big brother. There's no way to interrupt it. Just wait for me. Yin Hua smiled and slowly stretched his body. After the black liquid continuously fused into his body, a red light slowly appeared in his eyes. Yin Yi smiled happily. I will live forever, brother. You will too. Do you want to merge with me? That way, we won't be separated forever. The red light in his eyes became darker and darker. He looked more and more evil. Everyone knew that they couldn't let him continue like this. Because before the fusion was complete, his aura was infinitely close to that of a level 9. Xiao Qing helped Fu Jingshan to the corner of the wall and let him sit down. Then, she rushed forward. Her eyes were cold. Little Blossom floated behind her. Countless tentacles forcefully pierced into the black liquid. Little Blossom opened its petals with difficulty. The liquid was absorbed by Little Blossom. After absorbing the black liquid, it went through purification. The purest energy was extracted and injected into Xiao Qing's body. Then, it was absorbed by Xiao Qing. Impossible. How can you steal my energy? Yin Hua was shocked. The red in his eyes was so dense that it was almost solid. His aura didn't increase anymore. Instead, it seemed to be decreasing. He was a little anxious. He raised his hand and a large amount of liquid was injected into his body. Although some of it was still taken by Little Blossom, his aura had truly reached level 9. The black liquid kept transforming his body. Then, black patterns slowly appeared on the surface of his body. The patterns looked very evil and mysterious. From bottom to top, they reached Yin Hua's neck. Xiao Qing's aura kept increasing. With the help of the power provided by the big bug, she actually broke through to level 9 in an instant. After breaking through to level 9, Xiao Qing realized that her previous feelings were wrong. The difference between level 9 and level 8 was not just one level. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. The feeling of having power in her hands gave her the illusion that she could move mountains and seas. The gap between level 8 and level 9 was like a ravine that couldn't be bridged. Although she was only level 1, Xiao Qing felt that she could take on dozens of her previous self. She could even play with Fu Jingmo. That kind of fake level 9 was indeed only a little stronger than level 8. That was why she felt that level 9 wasn't that strong. Xiao Qing opened her eyes and clenched her fists. When she looked at Yin Hua again, her eyes were full of caution. She had only absorbed a part of the energy and broken through to level 9. What about Yin Hua, who had absorbed most of the energy? His strength had already surpassed level 9 and reached an even higher level. Yin Hua was a little crazy now. He kept yelling, "Impossible! How can you steal my energy? This is impossible!" His face was now covered with black patterns. The patterns extended from his cheeks to his forehead. Then, they formed a black pattern in the shape of an eye on his forehead. It looked exceptionally ugly and evil. The current Yin Hua no longer had that gentle and delicate appearance. Even Yin Yi felt that he was a little unfamiliar. Yin Yi looked at Yin Hua with tears in his eyes. After a long while, he said, "This isn't Yin Hua. He's not my brother." Chapter 706. He and Yin Hua had depended on each other for more than 20 years. No matter how much Yin Hua had changed, he could still recognize him. However, the person in front of him was not Yin Hua, nor was he his younger brother. He would never be wrong. Xiao Qing was calmer than anyone else. She said calmly, "No matter what, we have to fight. Yin Yi, go take care of Jingshan. Leave the rest to me." Yin Yi knew that Xiao Qing didn't want him to face his younger brother. However, the person in front of him was no longer his younger brother. "No need, Qing. I'm not saying that I'm cutting ties with him. He's no longer my younger brother. It's probably like a body takeover in novels. There's a different person in his body," Yin Yi said calmly. Although he was extremely disappointed and angry at the things that Yin Hua had done, and had thought of severing their relationship, and had even thought of killing him, the person before him was, after all, his younger brother. They had depended on each other for many years, and their relationship was very deep. How could they just let it go? Especially when he saw that his younger brother's body had been taken over by someone else, he was very sad. However, he wouldn't be soft-hearted because of this. "I'll end his life with my own hands. He's my younger brother. Even if he dies, he should die with dignity," Yin Yi said softly. "Then do it." Xiao Qing looked at Yin Hua and said, "If I die here today, please take Fu Jingshan and leave. Similarly, if you die here, I'll take your body and leave." Xiao Qing smiled. "If I die, I'll be very unwilling. After all, good days are coming. So try your best to live." Yin Yi smiled. He didn't have any regrets. His only regret was that his only younger brother had become like this in the end. He had once thought that he could watch his younger brother get married and have children. Even in the apocalypse, he could live a carefree life. Now, it seemed that he couldn't. Yin Hua's scarlet eyes were aimed at Xiaoqing. Before the two of them could make a move, he had already made the first move. His speed was extremely fast, and he fiercely collided with Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing felt as if she had been hit by a speeding train. She was sent flying. Even though she had a strong body of a level 9, she felt as if her bones were about to fall apart. Yin Yi also made his move. He quickly rushed towards Yin Hua. The tentacles on his body hit the ground, bringing a huge momentum, causing him to crash into Yin Hua at a very fast speed. Yin Hua sneered and extended his hand towards Yin Yi. However, his hand stopped halfway, as if Yin Hua's body was still instinctively unwilling to hurt Yin Yi. This instinct was very strong. He had just taken control of Yin Hua's body, so he couldn't go against this instinct. He could only look at Yin Yi with hatred and avoid him. After that, he didn't take the initiative to attack Yin Yi. He made Xiaoqing his target. It was Xiaoqing's first time encountering an opponent who used pure brute force. He was similar to Gu Panpan. However, Yin Hua's strength was very strong. His skin was covered with runes, so it was terrifyingly tough. It was hard to break through his defense with full force. Compared to him, Fu Jingmao was a piece of cake. This fight was indeed about technique. However, when one's strength reached a certain level, it would be able to break through everything with brute force. There were no other tricks. Xiaoqing had many mutated plants, but none of them could break through Yin Hua's defense. The only thing that could break through his defense was the spatial ability. This fight was really painful. It was like fighting with an iron bucket with your bare hands. Although you could leave scratches on the surface of the iron bucket, it was useless and your hands would be injured. Chapter 707. Xiaoqing felt extremely aggrieved. She had never fought such an aggrieved fight before. Yin Hua was probably very aggrieved too. He could avoid getting hurt, but he couldn't kill Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing was a meticulous person. The more she fought, the more she felt that something was wrong. His strength seems to be increasing. Yin Yi was the most aggrieved one. He wasn't as fast as Yin Hua, so he kept eating dirt behind him. He couldn't hit Yin Hua or help Xiaoqing, so he was just a decoration. I think it might be because he has just taken over this body and hasn't been able to fully integrate his strength. As he fights, his strength fuses with his current body. That's why we feel that his strength is increasing, Yin Yi said calmly. If that's the case, we have to finish him off as soon as possible. We have no way of knowing how strong he is in the end. Xiaoqing smiled. What if he kills us in an instant? But it's hard to even break through his defense. How are we going to kill him? Yin Yi said helplessly. Looking at the current situation, it's very difficult. Xiaoqing smiled bitterly. But we can give it a try. Yin Yi, can you delay him for a while? Yin Yi nodded. I'm slower than him. I can only delay him as much as I can. I might not be able to delay him for too long. Just a while. Xiaoqing was also helpless. After she broke through to level 9, she had a new understanding of space. But she didn't have time to digest it. Actually, Xiaoqing didn't know either. They could only take one step at a time to see if they could kill Yin Hua. After Yin Yi used his tentacles to replace his legs, he was much faster. He could barely keep up with Yin Hua's speed and forcefully hold him back. This was also because Yin Hua didn't attack him instinctively. But as Yin Hua slowly took over this body, even his instincts were being suppressed bit by bit. If this continued, he would kill Yin Yi sooner or later. Xiaoqing felt it very seriously. Not only could space be torn apart, it could also be superimposed and overlapped. It could even banish people to other dimensions or affect time. Of course, Xiaoqing didn't have any of these abilities. The only thing she could do now was to tear open a spatial rift and pass through it. As for that ability, it was indeed very useful at the moment. However, when it came to dealing with Yin Hua, it was somewhat lacking. She carefully tried to figure out a new way to use her spatial ability, which could be considered as a last-minute effort. Not only did Yin Yi have to stall Yin Hua, but he also had to ensure that Xiaoqing wouldn't be attacked. This was the most important thing, so he was having a hard time. Xiaoqing deduced many things from one instance. From the moment the space was torn apart, she thought that if the space in two places overlapped, the huge force produced would be even more terrifying than the space being torn apart. She decided to give it a try. She raised her hand and slowly began to manipulate space. Now that she had reached level 9, her ability to manipulate space had improved. She was able to manipulate space more skillfully. She slowly superimposed the two layers of space together. There would be a huge friction between the two spaces. When they overlapped, there would be countless tiny space cracks, just like little snakes. These were all created because they couldn't withstand the overlapping of space. When the last two layers of space overlapped, there were layers of lightning-like cracks in the middle. The layers of cracks all overlapped together, looking like a ball of black lightning. Even when light shone on it, it seemed to be swallowed up. Xiaoqing was a little surprised. She pulled back her hand in time. The space that was no longer under her control suddenly exploded. The shock wave from the explosion sent Yin Yi and Yin Hua flying. Seeing this, Xiaoqing immediately stretched out her hand and overlapped the space around Yin Hua. Yin Hua's expression immediately changed. He tried to retreat, but his front, back, left, right, and even up and down were all overlapped. There was no way to retreat. Xiaoqing saw the ball of black lightning appear again with her own eyes. It was like a small black hole. Yin Hua's scalp went numb. He held his hands in front of him, but they were quickly crushed. His tough body was like a ball of soft tofu in front of this ball of black lightning. He couldn't withstand a single blow. This was the first time he felt the threat of death. He really didn't want to die, he had just obtained freedom. How could he bear to die like this? Yin Hua roared angrily. The black patterns on his body rippled as though they were alive. Those black lines instantly retreated from his neck to his lower body. Then, he directly abandoned his lower body. His lower body suddenly exploded, forming a huge shockwave. From the outside, it looked like a bomb had exploded in a glass bottle. It was very spectacular. After the glass bottle received the violent shock wave, it also exploded. The entire underground city collapsed because of this explosion. Fortunately, this underground city wasn't built with tofu. Otherwise, Xiaoqing and the rest would have been buried alive. The smoke and dust slowly dispersed. Yin Hua crawled out from a pile of messy things. His lower body regrew at a speed visible to the naked eye. The way the granulation was slowly growing out of the fracture was truly terrifying. By the time Xiaoqing realized what was happening, he was back to the perfect Yin Hua. Xiaoqing stared blankly for a while. Then, she patted her own head. How could I forget about this? Fu Jingma could regrow his limbs, let alone Yin Hua. According to this situation, the next attack must be aimed at Yin Hua's vital points, such as his head. If his head was crushed, he could still be revived. Then, there would be no end to it. However, Yin Hua wasn't prepared to give Xiaoqing a second chance to prepare. He coldly bared his teeth and spread out his arms. A circle of black ripples rippled out. When the ripples reached Xiaoqing, she felt as though she was pressed down by a 10,000-pound rock. She couldn't move at all. That invisible gravity made it impossible for her to even lift her arms, let alone fight back. Yin Hua laughed and said, "This is the absolute difference in strength. Your little tricks can't make up for it. Xiao Qing raised her head with difficulty. She seemed to understand something. Comprehension. It was said that when one reached the 9th level, one could comprehend their own territory. In the territory, one's strength would increase infinitely. She had just reached the 9th level and hadn't comprehended her own territory. That's right. Yin Hua walked over. Before you die, I'll let you know. This is my gravity territory. Chapter 708. The gravity in the gravity field was not equal. It was based on the strength of the person in the gravity field. Xiao Qing was a level 9 paranormal. The gravity exerted on her was enough to crush Yin Ye's bones. However, the gravity exerted on Yin Ye's body was aimed at level 8 paranormal. Xiao Qing tried to stand up, but the gravity was too heavy. When she straightened her back, she could hear her bones groaning miserably. Yin Hua walked to Xiao Qing step by step, then laughed in a hoarse voice. Your body is much better than the one I'm using now. To be honest, I was going to kill you, but now I've changed my mind. I'm going to turn you into my puppet. When I'm tired of using this body, I can switch to yours. Xiao Qing did not give up struggling. She stood up with difficulty. Her bones were almost deformed because of the gravity. The black patterns on Yin Ye's body formed several small black tentacles, reaching for Xiao Qing. At that moment, Yin Yi suddenly roared and pounced on Yin Hua from behind. He didn't know what method he used to escape from this gravitational force, but the surface of his skin was oozing drops of blood. Yin Hua was being carried and rolled out along with Yin Yi. They hit the corner of the wall and the gravitational field became unstable for a moment. Taking advantage of this moment of instability, Xiao Qing successfully broke out. After rolling on the ground for a while, Yin Hua angrily scolded, "Get lost." Then, he broke free and threw Yin Yi against the wall. Then, he collided with Xiao Qing, who had jumped up. Both of their bones made cracking sounds. Yin Hua was pushed against the wall. Her chest caved in and she looked like a lump of soft mud. Xiao Qing's condition was slightly better, but half of the bones in her arm were completely shattered. After sending Xiao Qing flying, Yin Hua's chest expanded and quickly returned to its original shape. He lifted Yin Yi, who was very close to him, and said with a ferocious face, "Do you really think I can't kill you?" After Xiao Qing landed, she rushed out like a cannonball and knocked Yin Hua away again. This time, she saved Yin Yi. Yin Yi fell to the ground, panting violently. Then he saw Xiao Qing and Yin Hua rolling together. The black liquid and the power of space collided again and again. Xiao Qing did not give him a chance to open a new domain. However, the difference in strength was obvious. In the end, Xiao Qing's left shoulder was crushed by Yin Hua, and his chest was pierced by the space blade. However, Yin Hua was not afraid of being injured at all. He used a black tentacle to pin Xiao Qing to the ground and sneered, "I can't bear to hurt this body of mine again, so you can die quietly. Leaving this body to me is your greatest contribution." The moment he attacked, Yin Yi, who no longer had any strength left, rolled and threw himself forward. Then, countless tentacles pierced through his body. His eyes were red. Even at this point, he still hugged Yin Hua tightly. "Get out of my brother's body." Xiao Qing threw herself forward weakly. She held a space blade formed by the weak power of space in her hand. When she stabbed it, she aimed it at Yin Hua's chest. However, in that instant, the red in Yin Hua's eyes faded a lot. He raised his head and used his forehead to receive the space blade. The moment the space blade stabbed in, a ball of black light screamed and was annihilated. Drops of red flowed down from Yin Hua's forehead into his eyes and dripped down from the corners of his eyes. He had always been a meticulous person. How could he not leave a backup plan for himself? His backup plan was related to Yin Yi. Chapter 709. Many years ago, Yin Hua said, "Brother, wait for me to grow up. When I grow up, no one will be able to hurt you, unless they step over my dead body." Now, he really did it. Yin Hua's tears mixed with blood flowed all over her face. "Brother. I don't want to die. If I die, what will you do? You're so stupid, you can't even do basic housework. You can even hurt your fingers when cutting vegetables. I haven't even seen a girl who is willing to marry you and take care of you in the future. How can I rest assured and die? If I die, will you be sad? Will you miss me? Brother, I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid that I won't be able to see you again." Yin Hua held Yin Ye's hand tightly and couldn't say another word. He was so worried, Yin Yi trembled and held Yin Hua's hand. When the person in his arms slowly stopped breathing, he cried out loud. In this life, he didn't let anyone down, but he let Yin Hua down. At that time, because of work, he couldn't go home once in 10 days or half a month. Even if he went home, he would only stay for a day at most, sometimes even half a day. There was no one at home, only a part-time worker who would come to clean the room regularly. Yin Hua was originally a very cheerful child, but later on, she became more and more silent and isolated. If he cared more about Yin Hua, would it lead to the tragedy later on? His mind was filled with money. He wanted to earn more money to give Yin Hua a better life. He wanted them to not have to worry about basic necessities anymore. He wanted to save enough money to spend for the rest of his life, but his brother was gone. What was the use of money? He said, "Xiao Hua, I'll be your leg in the future." He said, "Xiao Hua, I'll be with you forever." He said, "Xiao Hua, when I earn enough money, we'll go to the seaside and buy a villa facing the sea. When I wake up every day, I'll be able to see the boundless sea." He said, "Xiao Hua, my biggest wish in my life is that you can live happily." He didn't fulfill all the promises he made. When Yin Hua died, he couldn't even close his eyes. He knew what Yin Hua was worried about. She was worried that he was still angry, worried that no one would take care of him in the future, worried that he would forget about his brother. Who said that zombies didn't have tears? Why was his face so wet? Yin Yi hugged Yin Hua tightly and wiped away the blood and tears on his face. His face was still so young, like a child who didn't know anything about the world. He did do a lot of bad things, a lot of stupid things, which made Yin Yi so angry that he wanted to cut off all ties with him. But they had depended on each other for more than 20 years, in such a cold winter, the two of them hid under the overpass. They only had cotton clothes to wrap around the two of them. They used their body heat to warm each other up. They crawled out from the snow and the brink of death. They had walked through the darkest and most bitter days together. They weren't blood brothers, but they were closer than blood brothers. Actually, Yin Hua wasn't a bad person. He was just too paranoid, which was why he did such a crazy thing. Yin Yi was so regretful that his heart was about to break. He hugged Yin Hua's corpse and cried until he collapsed. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Until Mu Lin and the others came in, Yin Yi was still holding Yin Hua in a daze, unwilling to let go. The injuries on his body were too serious. Even with the body of a zombie, he could not bear it. Mu Lin advised him in a low voice, "Brother Yi, let's go out first. We'll contact the people in the capital later. They'll blow this place up directly." Yin Yi was in a daze. Only then did he wake up a little. He murmured, "Xiao Hua, close your eyes. Brother will take you home." Yin Hua's blood-red eyes slowly closed. He had been an obedient child since he was young. How could he bear to let his beloved brother worry and feel guilty? Yin Yi hugged Yin Hua's corpse tightly and left the underground city. Others wanted to help him, but he refused to let go. He just hugged it tightly. When he was carried to the hospital for treatment, he hugged it too. Xiao Qing carried Fu Jingshan on her back and stood outside. She saw with her own eyes that a bomb had landed and blown the underground city to smithereens. Everything that happened was buried underground. No one would know what had happened back then. Except for her, Fu Jingshan, and Yin Yi. Let's go back. Xiao Qing inexplicably felt relieved. No matter what, everything was over. When the sun rose again, it would be a brand new day and a brand new future. Jiangqing would get better and better. They would all get better and better. After leaving S City, they did not go back immediately. Instead, they rested for a while. After all, the injuries of the wounded were very serious, especially the little bun's condition. The journey back was bumpy. If something happened, they would have no one to cry to. Xiao Qing's injuries were slightly lighter. When Fu Jingshan was still receiving treatment, she was already able to walk. Xiao Qing went to Yin Ye's place first. Since that day, Yin Ye's condition had been very strange. He hugged Yin Hua's corpse and refused to let go. No matter who tried to persuade him, it was useless. Even when he was receiving treatment, he wanted Yin Hua by his side. His mental state was also strange. Xiao Qing felt very guilty about this. After all, no matter what, one thing could not be changed. That was, she killed Yin Hua. When Xiao Qing walked into the tent, Yin Yi was holding Yin Hua in a daze. He sat on the bed with no expression on his face, but he gave off a feeling of extreme grief. "I'm sorry," Xiao Qing said softly as she sat down at the side. Yin Yi shook his head. "You didn't do anything wrong. If I had the chance, I would have killed Xiao Hua personally to free him. I just hate myself. Why didn't I notice Xiao Hua's abnormality and let him?" Yin Yi said softly. "I've let him down in this life. If I had the chance, I still want to be his brother and treat him well for the rest of my life. I want to make up for everything I owe him in this life. Don't take things too hard." Xiao Qing was very worried. Yin Yi smiled. "I won't. The good days are just ahead. Why would I take things too hard? I will live well for Xiao Hua's sake. He will definitely be waiting for me in hell." Xiao Qing sat with Yin Yi for a long time. She could feel that Yin Ye's condition was much better as he talked. When she walked out of the tent, Yin Yi was almost awake. When she returned to her place, all three men were there. Xiao Qing was silent for a moment before she said, "Let's get married." Chapter 710. When they returned to Rivertown, it was already a few days later. Xiao Qing had mixed feelings. Her enemies had all been cleared and they had also reached an agreement on the human camp. In the future, Jiang City would be like a utopia. They wouldn't interfere with anything and would be self-sufficient. They would live their own lives. They wouldn't have to fight and kill anymore. No one would interfere with them. It couldn't be any better. After returning, they could get married. These three men had been with her for too long. She had not given them any promises or a sense of security. She had already let them down. She would become their wife. Although she could no longer bear children for them, with little Bun, their family of 5 would still lead a good life. However, when they returned to the entrance of Rivertown, Xiao Qing was stunned. At that moment, she even had the urge to kill everyone. Although they had gone to kill Yin Hua mainly because of personal grudges, they were also doing it for the sake of humanity. In just one night, a few people were seriously injured, especially Yin Yi. His heart was hurt the most. However, when they returned home, they realized that Rivertown was almost in ruins. That was her home. Everyone in there was her family, but now, her home was in ruins and the corpses of her family were lying everywhere. Was this the world that they had sacrificed their lives to protect? Not only Xiao Qing, but the eyes of the others also turned red. They rushed into Rivertown crazily and realized that Xiao Tong had been forced into a corner. She tried her best to hold up a mental strength shield to protect the remaining elderly, women, and children behind her. The clothes in front of her chest were covered in blood. It was bloody and looked very glaring, and the people who had led the attack on Xiao Tong were all familiar. Most of them were from the 12 Base Alliance. There were also some that she did not recognize. Xiao Qing was heartbroken. Her eyes were red. She was injured, but she was still the first to rush into the crowd. She did not hold back her level 9 strength. Cracks in the space surrounded her. Everything that she touched exploded into a rain of blood in an instant. It could be said that the 12 Bases Alliance had mobilized all their forces this time. As for Rivertown, most of their forces had been deployed to deal with Yinhua. Their base was empty, which was why they had been attacked. Xiao Qing was now extremely regretful. If she had known earlier, she would have stayed behind to guard her home. She had never thought that when she led people to charge at the front, someone would cut off her path from behind. As expected, those who were not of the same race would have different intentions. Her eyes were red and she looked like she was possessed. At this moment, she really wanted to kill all the living people in Jiang City. That way, no one would hurt her people anymore. The 12 Bases Alliance was scared out of their wits. They ran even faster than they came. They came to attack Jiang City because they knew that Xiao Qing and the others were not in Jiang City. It could only be said that many people were judging others by their own standards. They were worried that after Xiao Qing killed Yinhua, she would turn around and target them. Therefore, they took this opportunity to come over and wipe out Jiang City. Who would have thought, Xiao Qing and the others actually came back. The motley crew immediately ran away. They didn't even put up a fight. Xiao Qing immediately led people to chase after them. She left some people behind to protect Xiao Tong and the others. The moment she went out, she saw that the motley crew had been intercepted. The people who intercepted the motley crew looked familiar. The one at the front was Abe Shirzhua. Behind him was Full Moon Whitewater. Chapter 7:11. Xiao Qing led her men and charged forward. She looked really terrifying because wherever she passed, there would be a rain of blood. Those who were killed by her did not even have any limbs left. At most, there would only be some flesh and blood dripping on the ground. After being attacked from both sides, except for a few people who managed to escape, the rest of the people from the 12 Bases Alliance were killed forever. However, the redness in Xiao Qing's eyes didn't fade. She raised her head and saw the people from the capital city rushing over at the fastest speed. The leader was the boss of the capital city. He was already old, but he was still panting. We rushed over as soon as we received the news. We didn't expect to be late. I'm really sorry. Xiao Qing raised her hand subconsciously and was about to kill someone. Then, Yan Qiue hugged her. Ah Qing. Calm down. Xiao Qing's body was trembling. After a long time, she pointed at Jiang City and said, "Do you see that? That's my home. Those lying on the ground are my family. Back then, you came to beg me to deal with Yinhua and the rest. Now, it's also you who are doing this to me." Her eyes were red and the corners of her eyes looked like they were about to split. You're right. Those who are not of our race must have different intentions. Their intentions must be different. Mayor Xiao. The old man smiled bitterly. We really didn't notice it in advance because we were all focused on S City. When we realized it, a few days had passed. Then, we quickly sent people over. He was very sincere. Mayor Xiao, this is indeed our fault. We will compensate for all the losses. When we go back, we will announce the operation to completely destroy the 12 Bases Alliance. We will definitely give you an explanation. Fuck the compensation. Fuck the explanation. Can the dead come back to life? Xiao Qing clenched her fists and resisted the urge to kill. Then, she said, "Get out now. From now on, anyone who steps into the territory of Jiang City will be killed without mercy." The old man wanted to say something, but Yan Qiue had already waved her hand and sent people out to push them all out. He knew that this was Xiao Qing's bottom line. She couldn't hold it in any longer. If she saw these people again, she would go crazy. After the people from the capital left, Moongazer Whitewater walked over. It had been a long time since they last met. He looked a little chubbier than before. At least there was some meat on his face. He said softly, "Master, you don't have to be sad. If you really can't do it, come with me. We'll go back to Japan. You're my master forever. I've already completely controlled that place. No one will dare to disrespect you." Xiao Qing closed her eyes and calmed down a little after a long time. Her voice was hoarse as she said, "My emotions are not stable right now. I'm afraid I can't entertain you. Qiue, bring them back and settle them down properly." Then, Xiao Qing walked towards Jiang City. Perhaps in the eyes of many people, the death of ordinary people didn't matter because they didn't have any combat power. To a base, they were like a burden. However, to Xiao Qing, everyone in Jiang City was like her family. Everyone here trusted her from the bottom of their hearts. Whether it was a mutant, an ordinary person, or even the old, weak, sick, or disabled, they were all sincere to her. They really treated Jiang City as their home. If Jiang City was a big family, then she was the head of the family. If anyone was hurt, she would be sad. But now, those who used to look at her with trust and respect were lying on the ground. They would never open their eyes to look at her again. They would never bring her nourishing soup when she was working. Those old people loved her as if she was their own daughter. Every time Little Bun went out, she would come back with a big bag of things. They were all carefully made snacks for the mother and daughter to pass the time. This was Jiang City. Everyone warmed her heart. "Mayor, Miss Xiao Tong is seriously injured. Please go and have a look." A paranormal, who was clearly 1.8 meters tall, was crying so hard that his eyes were red. When Xiao Qing went over, there were many people around the door. They were all looking at the door with concern. After hearing that Jiang City was forced to leave, Xiao Tong held on for a day and a night. Not only did she overdraw her power, but her internal organs were also almost exhausted. Xiao Qing sat in front of the bed. Her tears flowed down slowly. It wasn't that zombies didn't have tears. It was just that they weren't sad enough. She held Xiao Tong's hand quietly and sat there for a long time. Then, she said in a hoarse voice, "Do as I said before. From today onwards, set up sentries in Jiang City. Set up a sign every 50 meters. It's forbidden to enter by mistake. Violators will be killed without mercy." In this world, she only cared about Jiang City. In the future, no one would have the chance to hurt Jiang City. That night, Xiao Qing presided over a grand funeral. After cremation, all the corpses were buried in the cemetery of Jiang City. They counted the number of casualties and found that there were nearly 1,000 casualties. At that time, Jiang City didn't have any fighting power. Even the old, weak, sick, and disabled took hoes and shovels to fight against the enemy. Those were the old, the children, or the disabled who had no fighting power. They went to the battlefield and never had the chance to go down again. After that, the number of ordinary people in Jiang City decreased by nearly a third. After presiding over the funeral, Xiao Qing was in a very cold state. She could sit there quietly for half a day. Even Yan Qiue and the others couldn't do anything about it. Full Moon Whitewater was very obedient. It didn't bother them and stayed in Jiang City. Every day, it brought people to help repair Jiang City. On the fourth day, Xiao Qing sat on the balcony. She just couldn't figure it out and was still stuck in her own emotions. At this moment, Yan Qiue ran downstairs with a child in her arms. Her forehead was covered in sweat. "Ah Qing, look. The baby was probably just born. His skin was slightly red and wrinkled. He looked like a little monkey. He was crying loudly. This was the first baby born after the end of the world. Xiao Qing's eyes were moist. Yes, the darkness was over. They had welcomed the dawn. No matter how many people had sacrificed, they had exchanged for a better tomorrow for Jiang City. She walked down the stairs and hugged the baby. She said softly, "I've made you worry these days." "I'm fine." Those who were eavesdropping outside the door all cheered. Xiao Qing was their sky. If the sky collapsed, Jiang City would have no future. "Is his name Chenxi okay?" "The first light of dawn," Xiao Qing said softly. "Just like the new students of Jiang City." Chapter 7:12. Mu Lin looked at the sky. It was already dark, so she prepared to tidy up a place to sleep. The little bun moved his butt carefully and smiled fawningly. "Godmother, let me help you." "Go away, you little brat. You even learned to run away from home." Mu Lin rolled her eyes. She really wanted to grab the little bun's ear and smack his butt. However, although she was angry, she couldn't bear to do it. She could only turn her back and not look at the little bun to prevent herself from being angered. The little bun went over to her and massaged her shoulders. "Godmother, Godmother, I know I'm wrong. I just wanted to go out and play. My mommy won't let me out. Do you think there's anything fun outside? Your mommy doesn't lack enemies in her life. You ran out alone. She's so worried. Come back with me now," Mu Lin snorted and said. The little bun immediately pouted and acted pitiful. "Godmother, I'm not a kid anymore, but I haven't come out to play before. I want to see the outside world. I don't want to be cooped up in Rivertown all day." Mu Lin thought about it and agreed. He was a kid. It was only right for him to come out and see the world. He would be sick if he was cooped up all day. However, she was very angry that the little bun ran out alone. She was prepared to ignore the little bun. The little bun tried all sorts of fawning, bribery, and cuteness. In the end, Mu Lin had no choice. She said, "I'll bring you around, but you can't run around alone. You have to follow me closely." The little bun nodded repeatedly and said, "I definitely won't run around. I'll let your mommy know and bring you out to play. We'll go home after 2 days." Mu Lin stroked the little bun's head and said gently, "Little Xiao, do you think you're very powerful and we're making a fuss over nothing?" The little bun shook his head honestly. "I do think I'm very powerful, but I also know that there's always someone better than you. Mommy will be worried about me." As he spoke, he became a little worried. "Is mommy angry?" "I didn't think much at that time. I just wanted to come out and take a look." Mu Lin purposely scared him. "When your mommy heard that you ran out alone, she almost fainted and scared your 3 dads. Then, Yan Chiue checked and found out that your mommy was pregnant." The little bun jumped up immediately. "Little baby, is that your little sister? We still don't know if it's a boy or a girl." Mu Lin snickered. "Otherwise, I wouldn't be the one coming out to look for you. Now, your mother is being worshipped by your 3 fathers like she's their ancestor. They won't even let her out of the door." Little Bun immediately said, "Why don't we go home? I want to see my sister. There's still a long time before the baby is born. Why are you in such a hurry? I'll take you out for a walk to relax. When you come home, mommy's belly will be big." Mu Lin patted his head and said, "I'll go set up the tent. You go and pick some mushrooms and wild vegetables. We'll cook some soup." Little Bun nodded and went to pick mushrooms and wild vegetables. After a while, Little Bun ran back. Mu Lin had already set up the tent. The 2 of them cooked some wild vegetable soup. After eating their fill, they went to sleep. The next morning, they set off. Ever since Jiang City was attacked, Xiao Qing was especially angry. She set up a forbidden zone around Jiang City. Other than her friends and those who were recognized by her would receive a pass from Shaoqing, the others who dared to enter Jiang City would be killed without mercy. Chapter 713. Jingdu quickly spread the news and listed Jiang City as a forbidden area. No one was allowed to enter. This was because the people in the capital knew that Shaoqing was really infuriated. After all, Shaoqing had risked her life for the sake of humanity. However, some brainless people had attacked Jiang City and killed many people. They believed that Shaoqing was not joking. If anyone dared to enter Jiang City's territory, they would not be able to come out alive. Although some people thought that they were strong and brave, they sneaked into Jiang City's territory. In the end, they were thrown out as corpses. Shaoqing didn't care whether they were innocent or not. She only knew that she had put up a "no entry" sign at the border and spread the news. Those who violated the rules would receive the same treatment as the enemies of Jiang City. Those who trespassed into private houses and were killed could only admit that they were unlucky. Jiang City was her home. Those who trespassed should leave their heads behind. Because no one dared to enter Jiang City became more and more mysterious. The rumors became more and more exaggerated. However, there were two kinds of rumors. One was that the people living in Jiang City were zombies. They were not human beings. They were more xenophobic. Anyone who entered Jiang City would be treated as an outsider and killed. There were also some who said that the person who lived in Jiang City was like a savior. However, the person who had saved many people was hurt by the person he had saved. In a fit of anger, he brought his family and friends to build a paradise that belonged to him and forbade others from entering. Although there were many rumors, they gradually faded away. Because the apocalypse had entered the later stage, many zombies had evolved to a certain level and recovered their human memories. Then, these zombies were divided into three states. One was that they found out that they had eaten their family and friends. When they recovered their memories, they collapsed and chose to commit suicide to end their lives. Another one was that they couldn't accept it after they had eaten people. However, they still had their family and friends alive. For their family, they would continue to live and protect mankind. This kind of zombies would restrain the low-level zombies and prevent them from harming humans. There was another kind that was the most terrifying. After they found out that they had eaten humans, they were not afraid or regretted it. Instead, they were ecstatic because they had gained power. They would even continue to prey on humans and ability users in order to gain more power. Therefore, the current human world was still very chaotic. After reaching a certain level, zombies would awaken their memories, and their appearances would be no different from humans. Those zombies who hunted humans had once caused a lot of panic among humans. Fortunately, someone later invented a kind of drug that didn't have any side effects after humans took it, including paranormals. After zombies took it, they would have a special reaction, and their flesh would start to rot in an instant. Everyone who tried to enter the base and return from the outside had to take the medicine and be observed for a certain period of time before they were allowed to enter the base. The invention of the drug made the base a relatively safe place for the time being. Even if some zombies wanted to hunt humans, they could only do so outside the base. However, it was impossible for humans to stay in the base forever. They needed food and all kinds of resources. They still had to search for them outside the base. But now, all the bases were trying to cultivate all kinds of plants. Just like Jiang City, they had set up a cultivation base in their own base. According to this development, sooner or later, humans would be able to achieve self-sufficiency. They would no longer have to worry about starvation. However, the search teams that went out to look for resources and suitable places for cultivation bases were often attacked by zombies. The high-level zombies could command the low-level zombies. In other words, they could launch a small zombie tide. The search teams had to fight against the zombie tide and the high-level zombies. It was very difficult. There were even cases where the whole team was wiped out. The most terrible thing was that the high-level zombies liked the energy in the heads of ability users. They would also hunt ordinary people and feed them to their low-level zombies so that they could evolve. Those zombies who had lost their conscience always thought that they were a new species that was superior to humans. They wanted to rule the whole world. They no longer regarded humans as their own kind, but as their own food. After a short period of chaos, humans slowly organized to resist those zombies. However, the effect was not good. Although they could kill the low-level zombies, it was difficult for them to kill the high-level zombies. The recovery ability of high-level zombies was not as good as Shaoqing and the Air Die at Home, but it was much stronger than ordinary ability users. It might only take one high-level ability user to defeat a high-level zombie, but it would take many high-level ability users to kill a high-level zombie. However, the high-level zombies were the source of this disaster, which caused this disaster to continue for a long time and still not calm down. Mu Lin and the little bun only knew this after they came into contact with people. Mu Lin sneered and said, "Your mother had expected this. Humans' bad habits are very serious, so when she learned that zombies could recover their memories, she expected this day to come." However, the situation was more serious than she thought. Those idiots still insisted that those who were not of their kind must have a different heart. They would not accept those kind zombies who were willing to help them. It is normal for them to be suppressed like this. The little bun pursed his lips and said, "I am most worried that they will go to my mother. Aren't those people good at going to my mother when they can't beat them?" Mu Lin sneered and said, "It is not called a forbidden area for humans for nothing. Besides, your mother said that she will not intervene. She is pregnant and has no time to care about them. Let them fight. When they find that they have to unite and accept those zombies, they will have the ability to resist. If they don't repent, it will not be a pity even if they die." The little bun nodded. He did not like those people. The younger he was, the more he could feel the hidden emotions of humans. He could feel that those people were afraid of Jiang City. They were vigilant, but they were not friendly. So, why should they be friendly to humans? We will reach the town soon. We can stop and have a rest. Mu Lin touched the little bun's head. When they just walked from the cement road to the mud road, a person flew over and fell at their feet. Chapter 7:14. The man rolled on the ground a few times. His face was covered in dust, and he looked very embarrassed. He even reached out his hand and shouted, "Sister, take your son and run. There are many, many, many zombies behind us." Mu Lin silently stretched out his leg and blocked the man's face, not letting him touch him and the baby. "Can you move a little further away?" The man hugged Mu Lin's leg, looking confused and a little aggrieved. "I'm not dirty." After that, he looked at his dirty palm and silently moved his hand away from Mu Lin's leg. Fortunately, Mu Lin was wearing black shoes, so the man's palm print was not visible. But Mu Lin still wanted to kick the man away. However, the man looked adorable and funny, so Mu Lin did not kick him. The man was in a daze for a while, and then his expression changed. "Go. You won't be able to leave if you don't." Mu Lin looked behind the man and said, "Are you talking about them?" Dense zombies came out of the woods. The man looked back and saw those zombies. He was very dispirited. "I don't care if I die. I'm a bachelor anyway. I've brought you two trouble." Mu Lin kicked the man in disgust, telling him not to block the way. Then he said to the little bun, "A Qing has always wanted to train you. I think today is a good opportunity. Go, Xiao Zi. Call me if you can't do it." The little bun nodded and walked over. The man got up and stopped the little bun. "How can you let a kid go? Shut up." Mu Lin raised his hand and a spiritual barrier pressed the man down. The little bun stepped on the man's butt and went over. The man was in a state of confusion. Before he could get up, he saw the little bun rushing into the zombie crowd. The man covered his eyes and could not bear to watch. However, for a long time, he did not hear any screams or sounds of fear. Then he opened the gap between his fingers, and the man was stunned. That was because he didn't see any bloody scene. For example, Little Bun was lying on the ground, dying. Instead, there were zombies everywhere. Wherever Little Bun went, no one was spared. The man was stunned. There were still tears in the corners of his eyes. He just stared blankly with his mouth agape. When the Little Bun was a little tired, Mu Lin raised his hand and swept it away. Those low-level zombies were nothing in Mu Lin's eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to train Little Bun, Mu Lin could have cleared out all the zombies in an instant. After cleaning up, Mu Lin kicked the man's butt and said, "Get up. I have something to ask you." The man was especially confused. He was stunned for a long time before he got up. He was very honest and a little restrained. What's the matter?" Mu Lin said, "Tell me about the current situation. That is, the situation of each base." The man told her everything honestly. He was quite cute and his words were incoherent. When he talked about something, he would excitedly interject with another thing and his own thoughts. Mu Lin was a little impatient. She scratched her head and said, "Forget it. The situation seems to be quite troublesome. Let's take him back first." The Little Bun said hurriedly, "Let's go home. I really want to see my sister." Mu Lin nodded. "We'll go home right away." Then she found a vine and tied the man up. She dragged him back. The man was frightened. "Sister, what are you doing? Shut up." Mu Lin stuffed a handkerchief into his mouth. Then she took the Little Bun and dragged the man back. Chapter 7:15. When they got back, she would pass the boy to Xiaoqing and let Xiaoqing understand the situation outside. At noon, they stopped for lunch. Mu Lin's cooking was average. After all, when she was with Xiaoqing, it was Xiaoqing who cooked. Later on, when she was separated from Xiaoqing, she rarely cooked for herself. Her cooking was probably at the level of 2 eggs noodles. Little Bun's cooking was better than hers. No matter what, Little Bun was influenced by his genes, so his cooking was at least at the level of tomato and egg noodles. The two of them worked together for lunch. Although it was not a perfect meal, it was still considered a big meal after the apocalypse. Then, they started to eat. While eating, they felt that the back of their heads was in a mess. It seemed like something was moving around, making the grass on the ground rustling. Little Bun patted his stomach, but he did not see anything. After eating, the two of them slept. After all, they were children. They were still growing and needed enough sleep. When she got up and was about to leave, she found that the man was lying in the grass, his face full of tears like noodles. He looked very miserable. Mu Lin then remembered that there was another person on the ground. Mu Lin took the handkerchief out of the man's mouth. The man was almost crying. Sister, I haven't eaten for 2 days and 1 night, Mu Lin was a little embarrassed. I'll untie you. Follow me obediently. What I'm going to do will not harm you. As for the food, there's no leftover. I'll give you an apple to eat. I'll make more at night. I really won't run away. The man wiped his face. His face was covered in dust. He looked extremely disheveled. Mu Lin was disgusted. Go wash your face first. The man felt a little wronged, but he still went to the nearby stream to wash his face. After washing his face, he came back obediently. Mu Lin was also testing him. If he ran away while washing his face, she would bring him back and tie him up all the way. She did not care if he would become disabled because of being tied up for too long. She didn't expect the man to be so honest and come back on his own. Moreover, after the man was washed clean, he looked quite good. He had a baby face, tender as if he was underage, especially a pair of big watery eyes. Mu Lin could not help but ask, "Are you really underage? No wonder she's so good at crying, just like a crybaby." The man's eyes widened. "I'm already 24. 24, Mu Lin sneered and said, "Forget it." Little Bun also jumped up to touch the man's belly. Then, Mu Lin carried him up and allowed Little Bun to touch the man's face. After touching it, he clicked his tongue and said, "Underage." The man really wanted to jump up at that time. Even a child was mocking him. Then, Mu Lin slapped him on the back of his head. Mu Lin said lazily, "It's time to go." When they reached Jiang City, it was already night time. Duan Zhuangzhuang kept swallowing his saliva. He said carefully, "Sister Lin, this is a forbidden area for humans. You can't enter as you wish." "I wanted to come and take a look but I didn't dare." Mu Lin carried him and carried Little Bun. Then, she said, "Just shut up and follow me." Duan Zhuangzhuang was the man who was kidnapped by Mu Lin. He was quite scared, but he still followed with weak steps. As he walked, he said, "Sister Lin, I really don't want to die. If I die, remember to take my—" "Oh, I don't have any savings, shut up." Mu Lin was a little irritable. She regretted bringing such a person back. The three of them kept walking forward and soon met the first patrol team. The outer layer of the patrol team in Jiang City was always made up of 20 zombies and 3 mutants. This patrol team happened to be led by Gu Panpan. She was too idle in the city, so she always liked to wander outside. She might even meet someone who would fight with her. When Gu Panpan saw Mu Lin, she smiled. "Sister Lin, you're back." Then, she saw Little Bun. "Well, you little brat, you even learned to run away from home? Go back and see if your mother will beat you to death." Little Bun blinked and said pitifully, "Auntie, Pan Pan, you'll definitely plead for me, right?" Gu Panpan snorted and said, "I'll teach you a lesson. Then, you'll know what you can and can't do." Little Bun immediately pounced on Gu Panpan and acted like a spoiled child. Soon, Gu Panpan couldn't hold it anymore. She pinched Little Bun's face and laughed with him. Mu Lin coughed and said, "Later, pass the patrol task to someone else. Go back and have a meeting. I'll bring someone back. The situation outside is a little complicated. We need to discuss it." "Okay, Sister Lin. I'll go back after I tell them." She picked up the communicator and said, 54 patrol teams, take note. Start patrolling. Oh, Sister Lin is back. Remember to give the green light all the way." After Mu Lin greeted them, she led the team back. Duan Zhuangzhuang whispered, "Sister Lin, so you're from Jiang City?" He said with envy. "That's great. I heard that people in Jiang City are very protective." "Okay." Surprisingly, Mu Lin didn't ask him to shut up. The three of them arrived at the gate of Jiang City at the fastest speed. After they entered Jiang City, they went directly to Shao Qing's place. Along the way, many people greeted Mu Lin. Duan Zhuangzhuang realized that the people in Jiang City were really different from the people outside. There was no trace of despair or depression on their faces. They were all very happy. That kind of happiness came from the bottom of their hearts. It could be seen that they were really living a good and happy life. Duan Zhuangzhuang was very envious. This kind of place was full of hope and joy. It was like a ray of light at dawn, dispersing the darkness brought by the end of the world. He also wanted to live in such a place. The people here must be very happy every day. After entering the room, Little Bun rushed directly. Shao Qing was writing and Fu Jingshan was massaging her legs. Ever since she was pregnant, Shao Qing's legs were a little swollen. The three men had been taking turns to massage her legs to make her legs more comfortable. After Little Bun rushed over, he carefully placed his ear on Xiao Qing's stomach. Xiao Qing's stomach hadn't bulged yet, but Little Bun was very careful. He even asked, "Mama, does little sister know that I want to kiss her? She's touching my ear." Chapter 7:16. Xiao Qing snorted and gently pinched Little Bun's ear. "You've learned how to avoid problems." Little Bun coughed and said guiltily, "Mama, the weather is so good today. You're getting prettier." Xiao Qing snorted and said, "Don't think that I'll let you off just because of this. I won't settle the score with you now, but I won't let it go just like that." Little Bun quickly pretended to be obedient. "Mama, you can punish me however you want, but don't be angry. Otherwise, my sister will be unhappy too." Xiao Qing patted Little Bun and said, "Thank you for your hard work, Lin." "What's this?" Mu Lin told her what happened. Xiao Qing immediately sneered. "We've already closed the door. Naturally, we won't see anyone. But this matter needs to be discussed carefully. Bring some people with you. We'll have a small meeting later." Then, Xiao Qing gathered the higher-ups for a meeting. While she was in the meeting, a few people came to the edge of Jiang City. Gu Panpan was handing over her work and preparing to go back for a meeting. Unexpectedly, she bumped into those people. The team leader couldn't solve the problem, so he directly came to look for Gu Panpan. Gu Panpan was already preparing to go back. Hearing that, she went over again. She tidied her sleeves and said impatiently, "Didn't you see the words written on it? You're forbidden to enter. Hurry up and leave. Otherwise, you'll be buried." The leader quickly said, "We have something to discuss. We want to see the mayor. It's really important." Gu Panpan looked at this person and knew that she couldn't solve the problem. Then, she said, "Let me ask my family first." Before she finished speaking, a few other people came over. All of them were wearing cloaks that covered their heads and faces. Their faces couldn't be seen clearly. Only the leader had a rough and heroic look. He walked over with a smile. "Why? Are you here to ask for help? Didn't you say that those who aren't of our race must have different intentions? Stop talking nonsense." Gu Panpan said impatiently. "Didn't you see my contact? All of you are blind." After contacting Xiao Qing, she told her about the situation and said, "Sister Qing agreed. Come with me. Patrol teams 1 to 8, put down your tasks and send these people in." Then, a few patrol teams surrounded them from top to bottom, left to right. Although they said they were escorting them, they were actually monitoring them so that they wouldn't have the chance to run around. Xiao Qing was in the middle of a meeting when they arrived. When there were outsiders around, they naturally couldn't discuss any secrets. Xiao Qing placed her leg on her man's lap and leaned lazily on the chair. "Two families just arrived. Tell me, what are you doing here? There are rules in Jiang City. I made an exception and let you in. Naturally, you have to tell me something. If you want to play with me, don't blame me for being rude. Governor Xiao, we're here today for serious business. We're a family." The leader of the cloaked men chuckled, but he was interrupted halfway through his sentence. "Wait, who are you family with?" Gu Panpan said impatiently. "What kind of world is this? There are people who claim to be relatives." That person was probably used to being superior. Once he was blocked, his face turned ugly. He said stiffly, "We're all new humans. Naturally, we're family." New humans were what many zombies who had recovered their memories called themselves. They hunted humans to satisfy their desires. They would call themselves new humans. Chapter 7:17. Xiao Qing chuckled and said, "My family is all from Jiang City. Pan Pan is right about one thing. Relatives can't be casually claimed." That person's expression was completely unsightly, and he sat there without saying a word. On the other side was naturally the leader of the capital city. Xiao Qing had seen him many times. Although she didn't have a good impression of him, at least she didn't have a bad impression of him. He smiled and said, "I did come here to ask for City Lord Xiao's help to deal with these people. If it wasn't for the fact that I have no other choice, I wouldn't want to disturb you. I hope you can forgive me, City Lord. However, it's already the most important moment for the survival of the human race. That's why I shamelessly came here." Xiao Qing was very calm. "I've made it very clear before Jiang City sealed off the mountain. We won't participate in any affairs of the outside world. I also hope that you won't disturb us. The reason why I allowed you to enter Jiang City's territory this time is only because I'm in a good mood. I also want to talk things out with you. How you fight is your business. Don't involve Jiang City." The leader of the capital city didn't look good. He really had no other choice, so he came here to look for Xiao Qing. Currently, the two sides were in a confrontation. Mankind was the weaker side. If this continued, mankind would definitely be slowly nibbled away. That was why he shamelessly came here to ask for help. He didn't expect to meet the current enemy of mankind. The cloaked leader calmed himself down and said, "Mayor Xiao, this is what I think. We are all Homo evolutus, so it's natural for us to side with each other. I'm not here to ask for your help, I just want to communicate with you. How should I put it? They have always believed that those who are not of our race will have different intentions, so it's natural for us to unite. At the very least, we should be closer to each other." Xiao Qing held her chin and said, "Don't try to curry favor with me. I'll make it clear today. Jiang City is neutral. There are ordinary people, superpowered people, and zombies here. We don't flaunt ourselves as new humans or anything. We only have one goal, which is to live peacefully. Now that I've made it clear, everyone can chat with Lele and then go where you want to go. Isn't that good?" Both sides didn't look good. Xiao Qing was a tough nut to crack. As for the people in capital city, they were afraid that Xiao Qing would be persuaded by the so-called new humans and join them. Then, mankind would really be finished. After all, they did let Jiang City down. It was normal that Xiao Qing didn't like them. As for the new humans, they were afraid that Xiao Qing would help the people in capital city. If Xiao Qing really got involved, it would be hard to say who would win. It could be said that Xiao Qing was the only unstable factor in this war. No one wanted Xiao Qing to side with the other side. "Let's stop here today. Both sides, please leave. Don't come here in the future. Jiang City won't get involved." Xiao Qing was just pregnant. Her birth couldn't be seen, but she was protected by her family. It was as if she was almost 10 months pregnant. I hope that the city lord can reconsider. The people in capital city were a little more tactful. After saying this, they shut up. The people in cloaks kept talking. The general idea was that they were all new humans. They were the favored children of God. They should be in control of the world. Xiao Qing was helped by them. Even if she didn't help them, she should at least attack the people in capital city. Otherwise, she would be a traitor. There was a hint of threat in his words. It sounded like if Xiao Qing didn't say anything, Jiang City wouldn't be able to get away with it after they took care of the people in capital city. After Xiao Qing got pregnant, her temper had been very irritable. However, she was surrounded by her own people. Although she was irritable, she was comforted by the people around her. When she was facing outsiders, her temper swelled. She slammed the table and said, "You're like a fly. You didn't understand what I said just now, did you? Now get out of here, or I'll send you out." Since that person was awakened, he had always been the strongest among the zombies. It could be said that he had a high status. He had never been bullied like this. He was originally a rough person. Now, he lost his temper. He sneered and said, I want to be friends with you because you're the same kind. Respect is mutual. You've gone too far. If it weren't for the fact that you're the same kind, I wouldn't even set foot in Jiang City. After all, it's easy to tell who's strong and who's weak at a glance. The word strong was still on the tip of his tongue. Xiao Qing slapped him directly and said, "You're so long-winded. How dare you threaten people? Who gave you the courage?" Her slap was very fast. Before the others could see it clearly, that person had already gone out and was directly pressed against the wall opposite the gate. That person was dumbfounded. He was a level 9 zombie. It could be said that a level 9 zombie was already the top fighting force. At least, there were no level 9 superpowered people at present. He didn't know about Jiang City before. After all, after he was awakened, Jiang City had already disappeared. Only legends were left. Those legends were illusory and sounded very exaggerated. Who would believe that there were several level 9 zombies? Then, he was slapped away by Xiao Qing. He didn't even have time to react, let alone fight back. He only felt that for a moment, his body was stiff and couldn't move, as if he was imprisoned by something. He could only watch himself being slapped away. The moment he landed on the ground, he felt as if his internal organs were about to shatter. Of course, he didn't know that at that moment, a small seed had quietly fallen on his crystal nucleus. Xiao Qing wouldn't let things go out of control. Although she said that she wouldn't care about anything, she also wouldn't watch those zombies who had lost their conscience encircle humans and raise them as food. On the one hand, she couldn't stand it. On the other hand, if those new humans had no enemies, they would turn their eyes to Jiang City. It was the same for humans. Sooner or later, humans would attack Jiang City. Xiao Qing hoped that humans would have their own enemies. In this way, they would be busy fighting with their enemies instead of attacking Jiang City. She saw the current situation very clearly. As long as humans accepted those good zombies, their strength would be on par with the so-called new humans. A level 9 zombie wouldn't be able to determine anything. Besides, in the future, there would be more level 9 superpowered people. As long as humans gave up the idea that those who weren't of their kind must have a different heart, no, it should be this narrow prejudice, they wouldn't be so miserable and die out. Chapter 7:18. After slapping one of them away, Xiao Qing said to the other one, "I think I have made myself clear. Please go back. Jiangqing City will not get involved, now and in the future. If you need me to send you out, just pretend that I didn't say anything." The leader of the capital city was smart enough to take his men away. Although this trip didn't go as smoothly as they expected, at least they confirmed that Xiao Qing was neutral. It could only be said that it was their fault in the past. They couldn't blame Xiao Qing for not getting involved now. It was indeed narrow-minded to say that those who weren't of the same race would have different intentions. After they left, Xiao Qing continued the meeting with her friends. After playing for a while, Xiao Qing said to Duan Zhangzhuang, "If what you said is true and your performance is good, I can let you stay in Jiangqing City temporarily. After observing you, I will decide if you can become a member of Jiangqing City." Duan Zhangzhuang was very excited. "Thank you, Castellan." Xiao Qing's display of her skills had shocked the people on both sides. The new humans no longer dared to be arrogant. They were much more obedient and obediently avoided Jiangqing. The people in the capital city also thought it through. In the face of life and death, they still cared about those who weren't of the same race would have different intentions. Wasn't that courting death? Moreover, zombies were also transformed from humans. What was the biggest difference between humans and animals? It was just that humans had wisdom and emotions. Zombies who had recovered their memories were still human. However, some ideas couldn't be changed easily. Although they were still slowly changing their views and accepting those good zombies, there was still a gap between humans and zombies. After the war between the two sides slowly entered a stalemate, Xiaoqing was about to give birth. After being pregnant for 9 months, before the expected date of delivery, she started to have labor pains. The doctors who were already prepared rushed in. Xiaoqing's childbirth was really different from other women's. The 4 men squatted at the door, 3 big and 1 small. They were all frightened, but there was no sound coming from inside. It wasn't as heart-wrenching as in the movies and TV series, nor was it as difficult as they had seen before. About an hour later, the doctor walked out with a dull face and said, "She's given birth. Both mother and daughter are safe." The 3 men and the little bun quickly went in. Xiaoqing carried her newborn daughter. She didn't look weak at all. There was no smell of blood in the air. It didn't look like a delivery room at all. However, the 3 men were about to collapse, especially Fu Jingshan. He said directly, "This one is enough. We have a son and a daughter. What else do we lack? I'm not giving birth anymore." Xiaoqing nodded. She didn't want to have too many children. 2 was enough. The little bun even stood on tiptoe and muttered, "Mama, let me see my sister." Then a group of people came over to look at the baby. The newborn baby's skin was red and a little wrinkled. It didn't look good at all, but everyone praised it from the bottom of their hearts, especially the 3 silly fathers. Daddy number 1 Fu Jingshan, "Aya, our daughter's mouth is like mine." Daddy number 2 Yan Hanqing, "Our daughter's nose is like mine. It's tall and straight." Daddy number 3 Yan Qiue, "Her eyes are exactly the same as mine." Xiaoqing, "It's so wrinkled. How can you tell?" No matter what, nothing could stop the 3 silly fathers from loving their daughters. They hugged each other, and the way they carried the child was very standard. It looked like they had learned it in advance, but they didn't have any experience and were a little stiff. Chapter 719. After all, a newborn's body was too soft. They were all careless and were afraid of hurting their daughter. It was Mu Lin who broke the strange silence. "Have you given your daughter a name yet?" Xiaoqing teased the little bun and said, "The 3 of them insisted, so I decided to call her Little Liao. Her full name is Xiao Xiao." Mu Lin was speechless. The 2 of them added together would be Whistle. She couldn't bear to look and covered her eyes. Xiaoqing was really bad at naming. What was more frightening was that the 3 silly fathers were actually very supportive. Daddy number 1 Fu Jingshan, "This name is really cute." Daddy number 2 Yan Hanqing, "It's very nice and suitable for girls." Daddy number 3 Yan Qiue, "It's so deep and meaningful." Mu Lin, "Bah, shameless." When Xiao Xiao was born, she became the little princess of Jiang City. There was also Xiao Bai who liked her very much. Xiao Bai completely treated Xiao Xiao as his younger sister. He always hung the little bun on his left leaf and supported Xiao Xiao on his right leaf, just like a little nanny. However, he was very happy, so Xiaoqing didn't stop him. When the war officially ended, it was the 10th year of the apocalypse. Humans called this year the New Era. It was also the time when the dawn arrived. More and more zombies woke up. After all, there were more good people than bad people. Humans completely abandoned their prejudice and joined forces with the zombies to defeat the so-called new humans. Xiaoqing was worried that the level 9 leader would run away, so she sent a few of her friends to help. After getting rid of this group of people, at least the country was peaceful. The entire country was in a state of many things waiting to be done. Coincidentally, at this time, Yi developed a kind of medicine. This medicine was like the fertilizer in his previous life. When it was sprinkled into the ground during planting, no matter what kind of soil it was, it could grow food. The apocalypse was scary, but it would eventually be conquered by humans. The apocalypse wasn't good either, but it taught everyone a lesson. When you destroy the environment and pollute nature, you are actually cutting off your own escape route. Naturally, there would be another way to take revenge on everyone. For example, the apocalypse. The apocalypse was a result of nature's own adjustment. In order to not be destroyed, it changed the environment, just like the Ice Age. Now, even a little child knew that they couldn't destroy the environment, because if they did, it would be the end of the world. Even though they had entered a peaceful era, Jiang City's status remained the same. However, as humans abandoned their prejudices and Shaoqing forgot about hatred, Jiang City was no longer isolated from the rest of the world. They interacted with the outside world, and there would also be people who went out to train. However, they still maintained the tradition of not allowing people to enter Jiang City easily. However, every once in a while, Shaoqing would allow the survivors to organize a group of people to visit Jiang City. It was considered a friendly exchange. Shiroyuki Abe had already brought her people back, but one person stayed behind. It was full moon of white water. This guy was so thick-skinned that he couldn't be chased away. He was willing to pay a high price to stay in Rivertown. Shaoqing couldn't just throw him out because he owed her a favor. Don't just stand there. What time is it now? Go call Big Baby and Little Baby. We're going to the wedding. Shaoqing tidied up the creases on her clothes and walked down. She happened to see full moon of white water holding his chin in a daze. Ah! Full moon of white water jumped up and said, I'll go now. There were two couples today. First, Mu Lin and Duan Zhengzhuang, who liked each other. Then, Xiao Bai and Xiao Tong, who were together for some reason. Shaoqing encouraged Xiao Bai to confess. She even secretly eavesdropped on them. Xiao Bai wasn't a talkative person. He blushed and mustered up his courage to say to Xiao Tong, I'm incomplete. It's strange, but my heart is complete. It belongs to you. I like you. Can you marry me? Xiao Tong liked Xiao Bai too, but she was too embarrassed to confess. After all, she was a girl. Xiao Tong replied, I was deaf and you were mute. You didn't despise me, so why would I despise you? Also, you didn't find it strange at all. I'm willing to marry you. As for Mu Lin and Duan Zhengzhuang, Shaoqing could only say that Duan Zhengzhuang was a masochist. After being bullied, she fell in love with them. The two couples who were going to be married today were very important to her. Shaoqing naturally had to be solemn. Xiao Zi and Xiao Xiao were flower boys today. One looked like a little gentleman, while the other looked like a little princess. After the apocalypse, weddings weren't as complicated as before. It was just a simple ceremony followed by a huge banquet. Everyone in Jiang City could come and participate. It was like a carnival. When Shaoqing looked at the two newlyweds, her heart was filled with emotions. No matter how unfair the heavens were to her in the past, she was now very grateful to the heavens, because whether it was her or the people she cared about, they had all obtained their own happiness. Xiao Tong insisted that she sit in the seat of the elders. They had a Chinese ceremony where they bowed to heaven and earth before bowing to the elders. When Xiao Tong knelt down and kowtowed, her eyes and Xiao Tong's eyes were filled with tears. Especially Xiao Tong. It could be said that Xiao Tong's life was given by Shaoqing. Now, everything she had was given by Shaoqing. Rather than saying that they were sisters, their relationship was more like that of a mother and daughter. Shaoqing felt a little sad to send her daughter to a wedding, even if the other party was her own people. But she still smiled. After the two couples finished the ceremony, it would be after the apocalypse, and no woman would insist on waiting in the bridal chamber. The two couples also joined in the carnival. Shaoqing didn't drink. She just held the tea that the two couples gave her. She was very carefree. In the end, other than those who had a mission and had to patrol, most of the people were drunk. Shaoqing quietly went to Gu Ponpon's side and whispered, You still haven't forgiven him. Gu Ponpon's face was red, but her eyes were clear. Sis, some things can't be solved just by forgiving. I used to abuse him to vent the pain in my heart, but he also used abuse to vent his guilt. It's good that we are like this. At least he can't leave me anymore, and I have complete control over him. Yi Wuxia accompanied her by her side. His eyes were filled with gentleness and perhaps guilt. Xiao Qing thought, everyone has their own way of life. You are not a fish, how can you know the happiness of a fish? Actually, everyone is very good, isn't it? Xiao Qing turned her head. 3 men were carrying 2 children and waving at her. She didn't know if it was because she drank, but her eyes were a little moist. The bitterness of this half of her life was finally over. All that was left was happiness. END that you're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.